I never knew if I was fired for doing something wrong or simply because I refused to smile at him in the elevator that afternoon. The pink slip came at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, delivered with the kind of casual cruelty only someone who's never earned their position could muster. Lack of collaborative spirit, he'd said, those manicured fingers drumming against my desk. 3 years of flawless performance reviews, and it all ended because the boss's son decided I wasn't playing his game. My name is Elena Braddock. And until that Friday afternoon, I'd built my entire identity around being exceptional at my job. 34 years old, single by choice, and one of the most respected project managers in Austin's tech scene. I joined Virelia Solutions 3 years ago when it was still hungry, still innovative, before the old guard started bringing in their children like some Silicon Valley monarchy. I'd just been nominated for Vice President of Product Development. The announcement had come Tuesday morning, and I'd actually allowed myself to feel proud. My team had delivered 7 successful launches in 18 months, each one under budget and ahead of schedule. The clients loved me, my colleagues respected me, even the C-suite knew my name, or so I thought. Then Connor Rains arrived. He showed up on a Monday, 3 weeks before my termination, walking through our glass doors like he owned the place, which, technically, his father did. Russell Rains had become CEO 6 months earlier, promising to inject fresh blood into Virelia's leadership. Apparently, that fresh blood shared his DNA. Connor was 28, with an MBA from a school that cared more about his father's donations than his grades, and a resume so thin you could read through it. They gave him the title Senior Strategy Supervisor, a position that didn't exist until he needed it. His office was bigger than mine, with a view of the Colorado River, and he made sure everyone knew both facts. The first time he approached me, I was reviewing sprint reports in the break room. "You must be Ellen," he said, deliberately getting my name wrong while his eyes took an inappropriate pour. "I've heard you're quite the taskmaster." "It's Elena," I corrected, keeping my voice neutral. "And I prefer effective leader." He laughed like I'd told a joke. "We should grab drinks. I like to know the key players." I declined politely, citing a client deadline. He didn't like that. Over the next 3 weeks, Connor inserted himself into my projects, questioned my decisions in meetings where he clearly didn't understand the technical requirements, and made suggestions that would have derailed months of work. He had this way of standing too close, of letting his hand linger on shoulders, of making comments that danced on the edge of inappropriate but never quite crossed the line you could report to HR. The elevator incident happened Thursday afternoon. I was heading down to the parking garage, exhausted from cleaning up another one of Connor's strategic interventions. The doors opened, and there he was, cologne so strong it made my eyes water. "Elena," he said, stepping aside just enough that I'd have to brush past him to enter. "Working late again? You should learn to delegate, maybe over dinner." "I'm good, thanks." I took the stairs instead. The next day, Friday, started normally. Morning stand-up, 2 client calls, lunch at my desk while reviewing code deployments. At 4:30, I was preparing the weekend handoff when Connor appeared at my desk with Jan from HR. Jan wouldn't meet my eyes. "Elena," Connor said, his voice carrying that false concern executives learn in leadership seminars, "we need to discuss your future here at Virelia." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Is there a problem with the Morrison project? We're actually 2 days ahead." "It's not about any specific project," he interrupted. "It's about cultural fit, team cohesion. Your lack of collaborative spirit has become problematic." Lack of collaborative spirit. The words hit me like ice water. In 3 years, I'd never received a single negative review. My 360 feedback scores were consistently in the 95th percentile. "I don't understand," I said, though I was beginning to. "My performance reviews." "This isn't about performance metrics," Connor said. That practiced sympathy never reaching his eyes. "Sometimes, a company needs people who can work with the leadership team. All of the leadership team." There it was. The real reason, wrapped in corporate speak but clear as day. I hadn't played along. I hadn't smiled in the elevator. Effective immediately, I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. We'll give you 15 minutes to collect your personal items. Jan will escort you out. 15 minutes to pack up 3 years. I filled a single banker's box while Connor watched from my doorway, ensuring I didn't take any company property. My team was mysteriously absent. Later, I'd learned they'd been called into a mandatory meeting in another building. As security walked me out, my badge already deactivated, Connor called out, "It's nothing personal, Elena, just business." But we both knew it was entirely personal. The parking garage felt like a tomb. My hands shook as I loaded the banker's box into my Accord's trunk, the sound echoing off concrete walls. I sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes, engine off, staring at nothing. Then I drove. I made it to the Whole Foods parking lot on Lamar before the tears came. Ugly, body-shaking sobs that I hadn't allowed myself since my father's funeral. A woman loading groceries glanced at me with concern, and I had to look away. Here I was, Elena Braddock, the woman who'd presented to Fortune 500 boards without breaking a sweat, crying in a grocery store parking lot like a fired intern. The humiliation burned worse than the loss. Not the job. I could find another job. But being dismissed by that privileged, incompetent child who couldn't debug a simple Python script if his trust fund depended on it. Connor Rains, who'd asked in a meeting what API stood for. Connor Rains, who'd suggested we leverage blockchain for a simple database migration. That Connor Rains had ended my career at Varelia with a wave of his soft, uncalloused hand. I drove home to my condo in Hyde Park, poured 3 fingers of bourbon, and sat on my balcony watching the sun set over Austin's skyline. The city looked different now, hostile, indifferent. My phone buzzed with messages from my team, but I couldn't face them yet. What would I say? That I'd been fired for not flirting with the boss's son? Saturday came with a hangover and harsh clarity. I replayed every interaction with Connor, looking for where I'd gone wrong, but each memory just made me angrier. There was the time he'd cornered me after the Q3 planning meeting. "You know, Elena, you'd go further here if you were more approachable," he'd said, standing close enough that I could smell his breath mints. "I could help with that, mentor you." Or the Monday he'd shown up at my desk with coffee, which I don't drink, and made a show of being thoughtful in front of the team. When I'd politely declined, he'd made a joke about me being too uptight to accept a friendly gesture. The worst was during the Henderson client presentation. Connor had inserted himself at the last minute, claiming Russell wanted senior leadership visibility. He'd contradicted my technical assessments, proposed solutions that would have tripled the budget, and somehow took credit when I salvaged the meeting. Afterward, he'd pulled me aside. "See how well we work together? We should do this more often. Maybe discuss strategies over dinner at my place. I make an excellent ribeye." I'd maintained professional distance, and now I was paying for it. By Saturday night, the shock had crystallized into rage. I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop, scrolling through LinkedIn, watching Connor's profile with its inflated accomplishments and stolen credit. Senior Strategy Supervisor at Varelia Solutions. Driving digital transformation and innovation excellence. The bastard couldn't drive a golf cart without GPS. The unfairness of it all made me want to scream. I thought about my team, Marcus, who'd just bought his first house counting on his senior developer salary. Priya, here on an H-1B visa, now vulnerable without my protection. James, fresh out of college, who I'd been mentoring. They'd all suffer under Connor's incompetence. I pulled up my performance reviews, my client testimonials, the emails praising my work. 3 years of excellence, destroyed in 15 minutes by a man who'd been at the company 3 weeks. The folder of accomplishments felt like looking at someone else's life. Sunday was worse. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only exhaustion and humiliation. I knew people would be talking. Austin's tech scene was small, incestuous. By Monday, everyone would know Elena Braddock had been fired. They wouldn't know why. Connor would make sure the official story was vague but damaging. cultural fit issues, difficulty with authority, unable to adapt to new leadership structures. I thought about calling my lawyer friend, Sarah, but what would I say? That I was fired for refusing to date my boss's son? Texas was an at-will state, without explicit sexual harassment, and Connor had been too smart for that. I had nothing. At 3 a.m. Monday morning, I was still awake, laptop open, reading about wrongful termination suits I'd never win. The bourbon bottle was half empty. My inbox had 43 unread messages from colleagues, none of which I could bring myself to open. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I'd done everything right. Worked harder, stayed later, delivered more than anyone else. I'd played by the rules in a game I didn't realize was rigged from the start. Monday morning, 7:43 a.m. I was nursing black coffee and contemplating whether to update my LinkedIn when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Maya Patel. She'd worked in Virelia's HR before moving to a competitor 6 months ago. We'd stayed friendly. "Elena, don't hang up," she said immediately. "I'm calling from my personal phone. This is important." "Maya, I really can't. Connor Rains is setting you up." The coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. "What do you mean?" "I still have friends inside. Jan called me Friday night, crying. Connor forced her to process your termination without proper documentation. No written warnings, no performance improvement plan, nothing. She tried to push back, but he threatened her job too." I set the mug down carefully. "That's unethical, but not illegal in Texas." "There's more." Maya's voice dropped. "Remember the Morrison project? The one that went over budget last month? That wasn't my project. Connor took it over when..." I stopped. Understanding flooding through me. "Oh my God. He's blaming the budget overrun on you. $500,000 in unauthorized expenses. He's filed paperwork claiming you approved vendor contracts without authorization, then tried to hide it. Elena, he's not just firing you. He's building a case for financial misconduct." My stomach turned to ice. But there's a paper trail. Emails showing he took over. Deleted from the server Friday night, along with your access logs. It doesn't know yet. But when they audit... Maya paused. "Elena, if this sticks, you won't just be unemployed. You could face criminal charges." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "He can't. There must be backups, witnesses. Who's going to testify? Everyone still there needs their jobs. And Connor's been smart. He's got emails where you're CC'd on the vendor discussions, making it look like you were involved even after he took over." "Maya, what do I do?" "Fight back, now. Before his version becomes the official story." She gave me a name, David Kim, a forensic accountant who specialized in corporate fraud. "He's expensive but worth it. And Elena? Whatever you're thinking of doing, do it fast. Connor's presenting to the Steinberg Group this morning at 10. They're Virelia's biggest investors." After Maya hung up, I sat in stunned silence for exactly 30 seconds. Then I went to war. First, I called David Kim. He answered on the second ring. And after a brief explanation, agreed to meet me in an hour. "Bring everything," he said. "Emails, documents, anything you have saved locally." Next, I opened my personal laptop, the one where I'd been smart enough to BCC critical emails over the past 3 years. Thank God for paranoia. There they were, Connor's messages taking over the Morrison project, his approvals for the vendor contracts, his demands to expedite without proper bidding. At 9 a.m., I met David at a coffee shop downtown. He reviewed my documentation with the intensity of a surgeon, occasionally making notes on his tablet. "This is good," he said finally, "but we need more." Connor's made one crucial mistake. He had to use his company credentials to delete those files. That leaves a trace. Can we get those logs? Not legally, not without a subpoena. But... He pulled out his phone. "I know someone at Steinberg Group. They don't like surprises, especially financial ones involving their investments." While David made calls, I contacted 3 former clients Connor had alienated in his 3 weeks at Varelia. Each had stories, inappropriate comments, blown deadlines from his interference, his insistence on expensive consulting dinners at establishments that looked suspiciously like strip clubs on expense reports. Robert Chen from Amplify Solutions was particularly angry. That little shit told me you were being replaced because you couldn't handle modern business practices. Then he suggested we discuss the contract renewal at a gentleman's club. Would you be willing to document that? Elena, I'll do you one better. I recorded the call. Texas is a one-party consent state, and I've been recording everything since the Henderson lawsuit. Want me to send it to someone? By 9:45 a.m., the pieces were falling into place. David had reached his contact at Steinberg. The clients had sent their complaints directly to Russell Raines's email, copying the board of directors. And I'd compiled a forensic timeline showing exactly when and how Connor had manipulated the Morrison project. You know, David said, reviewing our assembled evidence. Connor's about to walk into that investor meeting thinking he's won. He has no idea what's coming. I thought about Connor's smug face, his casual cruelty, the way he'd smiled while destroying my career. For the first time since Friday, I smiled too. Good, I said. Let him be surprised. Just like I was. By 10 a.m., while Connor was strutting into the Steinberg meeting, I was building something far more devastating than a simple complaint. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. If Connor's version of events stood, I'd be unemployable and possibly facing fraud charges. But if I played this right, I could expose the entire toxic system that enabled him. David Kim had connected me with Rebecca Walsh, a labor attorney who'd made her reputation dismantling corporate cover-ups. We met at her office, a sleek space overlooking Congress Avenue. She reviewed my documentation with the precision of someone who'd seen this play out before. The wrongful termination is clear-cut, she said, adjusting her glasses. But that's small potatoes. The financial fraud allegation, that's criminal. Connor Raines hasn't just violated employment law, he's potentially committed securities fraud by lying to investors about who's responsible for the budget overrun. So what do? We give them everything at once, make it impossible to ignore or bury. She pulled up her laptop. I have a contact at the SEC who'd be very interested in a company executive falsifying financial records before an investor presentation. And the Texas Workforce Commission takes retaliation very seriously. While Rebecca drafted the legal filings, I worked another angle. I reached out to Marcus, my former senior developer, through Signal. Elena, thank God, he messaged back. This place is chaos. Connor's been trying to access your old files all weekend. He had IT give him admin privileges. Marcus, I need you to be careful. Don't do anything that could risk your job. Already done. I backed up everything Friday night when I heard what happened. The real Morrison files, the original emails, your performance reviews, all of it, stored on my personal drive before Connor could delete them. My throat tightened. Marcus, that could get you fired. So could refusing to implement Connor's insane blockchain idea. At least this way, I go down fighting. By noon, we had assembled a comprehensive package. David's forensic accounting report showing Connor's direct responsibility for the Morrison overrun. Rebecca's legal filing documenting wrongful termination and defamation. Recordings from 3 clients detailing Connor's inappropriate behavior. Marcus's preserved files showing the systematic deletion of evidence. Maya's written statement about being pressured to process an illegal termination. But the crown jewel came from an unexpected source. At 12:30, my phone rang with an unknown number. Ms. Braddock? This is Jennifer Liu from the Austin Business Journal. I'm investigating some interesting documents that were just sent to me about Varelia Solutions and Connor Raines. My heart stopped. I don't know anything about... I'm not asking you to confirm or deny. I'm calling because I've been investigating Connor Raines for 3 months. This isn't his first time. He was quietly dismissed from his last 2 positions for similar behavior. His father always makes it go away. Why are you telling me this? Because I have 2 other women who were fired from companies after Russell Raines invested and Connor was installed. They're willing to go on record if someone else steps forward first. Are you that someone, Ms. Braddock? I thought about Priya, about Jan and HR, about every woman who'd have to deal with Connor if he stayed in power. Yes, I said. I am. By 2 p.m., we had refined our strategy. This wasn't going to be a single strike, but a coordinated assault from multiple directions. Rebecca would file with the Texas Workforce Commission at 3 p.m. David would send his forensic report to the SEC at 3:15. Jennifer Liu's story would go live online at 3:30, with the print edition hitting Tuesday morning. But first, we had one more card to play. The Steinberg Group needs to know before the market closes, David said. If they're still in that meeting planning to increase their investment based on fraudulent information, they could sue everyone involved. Rebecca smiled, a shark sensing blood. I'll handle that. I know Steinberg's general counsel. We went to law school together. At 2:45 p.m., Rebecca made the call on speaker. Patricia? It's Rebecca Walsh. You need to pull your team out of the Virilia meeting immediately. You're about to invest based on fraudulent financials. No, I'm not joking. Check your email. I just sent you everything. We could hear Patricia's sharp intake of breath as she opened the files. Jesus Christ, Rebecca, is this verified? Every document, every recording, every witness statement. Your boy Connor Raines has been cooking the books and covering it up by firing the person he's framing for it. I need 5 minutes. The line went dead. We sat in tense silence, watching the clock. At 2:51 p.m., Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text. Meeting terminated. Steinberg pulling out. Thanks for the heads up. You just saved us from a massive liability. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but a sense of balance being restored. Connor had thought he was untouchable, protected by his father's position and his own privilege. He was about to learn otherwise. What now? I asked. Rebecca checked her watch. Now we pull the trigger on everything else. In 45 minutes, Connor Raines won't just be unemployed, he'll be radioactive. At 3 p.m. sharp, I sat in a corner booth at Cosmic Coffee, laptop open, watching everything unfold in real time. Rebecca had given me access to a shared document where she was tracking each phase of our coordinated strike. My phone was on silent, but the screen lit up constantly with notifications. 3 p.m. Rebecca's filing hit the Texas Workforce Commission. 3:15 p.m. David's forensic report landed at the SEC. 3:30 p.m. Jennifer Liu's article went live. I refreshed the Austin Business Journal homepage, and there it was. Virilia Solutions executive accused of financial fraud, pattern of misconduct at multiple companies. The headline photo showed Connor at some charity gala, champagne in hand, that practiced smile frozen in pixels. My phone buzzed. Marcus had sent a screenshot from the company Slack. Someone had linked the article in the general channel. And the reactions were pouring in. Shock emojis, angry faces, dozens of holy shit messages before IT locked the channel. At 3:47 p.m., something beautiful happened. Someone inside Virilia started live streaming the executive floor on Instagram. I couldn't believe what I was watching. The video was shaky, filmed from behind a partially open door. Connor stood in the glass-walled conference room, his face red, gesticulating wildly at his father. Russell Raines sat with his head in his hands while 3 other board members stood around the conference table. Papers scattered everywhere. One of them, I recognized her as Patricia Steinberg from the investor group, was pointing at a laptop screen, her mouth moving rapidly though I couldn't hear the words. The live stream cut to the lobby. Security guards were stationed at the elevators. Then back to the executive floor where Connor was now being escorted out by 2 members of IT security. His company laptop and badge already confiscated. His father wouldn't even look at him. The comments on the live stream were exploding. Karma is real. He fired Elena on Friday, remember? Daddy can't save you now. Securities fraud hits different. By 4 p.m., my phone was unusable from the volume of calls and texts. Former colleagues, recruiters who'd somehow already heard, reporters wanting statements. I ignored them all except one. A text from Jan in HR. Emergency board meeting in session. Connor terminated effective immediately. Criminal investigation pending. Elena, I'm so sorry I couldn't stop him Friday. Please forgive me. I typed back. You were protecting your job. I understand. Take care of yourself. Jan. At 4:30 p.m., Rebecca called. The SEC is opening a formal investigation. Connor's assets are being frozen pending review. And Elena, Russell Raines just resigned as CEO. The board gave him a choice: step down voluntarily or be removed for failure of oversight. I set my phone down, stunned. I hadn't expected that. Russell Raines had built Veralia from nothing, and now his son had destroyed his legacy in a single Monday afternoon. Jennifer Liu sent me a link to the updated article at 5 p.m. 3 more women had come forward with stories about Connor from his previous companies. The pattern was always the same: hired through nepotism, targeted women who wouldn't play along, fabricated reasons to fire them. Then Daddy's money made it go away. Except this time, Daddy's money couldn't outrun the SEC. By 6 p.m., as Austin's tech workers were heading home, the story had exploded across social media. Veralia, Susan was trending, though I had no idea who Susan was or why she was relevant. LinkedIn was ablaze with think pieces about nepotism in tech. Someone had made a meme of Connor's corporate headshot with "It hurt itself in its confusion" underneath. I closed my laptop and sat back, watching the coffee shop fill with the evening crowd. A group of young developers sat at the next table, animatedly discussing the scandal. One of them, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 25, said, "This is why I document everything, every inappropriate comment, every sketchy request. You never know when you'll need it." Smart girl. Smarter than I'd been at her age. My phone buzzed with one last message from David Kim. Final tally: SEC investigation. IRS audit triggered by the fraud allegations. 3 potential criminal charges, and 17 women now considering civil suits. Connor Raines isn't just done at Veralia. He's done everywhere. I thought about Connor walking into that Monday morning meeting, confident that he'd won, that he'd successfully destroyed another woman who dared to reject him. He'd probably rehearsed his presentation, ready to take credit for solving the Elena problem and the Morrison budget issues in one clever stroke. Instead, he'd walked into his own execution. The barista called out someone's order, vanilla latte for Connor, and I couldn't help but laugh. Even the universe had a sense of humor today. I pulled up the live stream one more time. The final post showed the Veralia parking garage. Connor was being escorted to his Porsche by security, carrying a single banker's box of his possessions. The same walk of shame he'd orchestrated for me just 3 days earlier. Except my termination hadn't made the evening news. Tuesday morning arrived with 17 voicemails from Verelia's interim CEO, asking me to discuss my future with the company. I deleted them all. Rebecca had been clear. Any communication should go through her. But I knew what they wanted. With Connor gone and Russell resigned, they needed someone who actually understood the products, the clients, the real work that kept Veralia running. They needed me back. The thought made me almost physically ill. Return to those glass walls where everyone had watched my humiliation? Work alongside people who'd stayed silent while Connor destroyed my career? Pretend that a reinstatement and a probable promotion could erase what had happened? No. At 10 a.m., I met with Rebecca at her office. She slid a letter across her desk. Verelia's formal apology and reinstatement offer. Vice President of Product Development, the position I'd wanted. 50% salary increase. Full back pay. Comprehensive legal indemnification. Stock options. Even a 6-month sabbatical, if I wanted it. "It's a good offer," Rebecca said carefully. "Better than what most wrongful termination suits achieve. But you don't have to take it. With the evidence we have, we could pursue civil action. The payout would be substantial." I held the letter, feeling its weight. 3 days ago, I would have given anything for this vindication. Now it felt hollow. There's a third option, Rebecca continued. Sarah Rodriguez called me this morning. I knew Sarah. She'd left Google to start her own firm, focusing on ethical AI development. We'd spoken at conferences but never worked together. She's been following the story. Her company, Nexus Technologies, needs a head of product. Smaller company, but better culture. She specifically said she wants someone who won't tolerate toxic leadership. When would she need an answer? She's flexible, said you've been through enough without adding deadline pressure. That afternoon, Maya called. Elena, you need to know what's happening here. It's complete chaos. 3 major clients have pulled out. The stock dropped 12% at opening, and, she paused. 40% of the engineering team submitted resignations this morning. They're all citing toxic culture and safety concerns. Safety concerns? If Connor could delete evidence and frame you, what else has been covered up? People are scared. Marcus started a whistleblower channel, and the story's coming out. Elena. Connor wasn't the only problem. He was just the most visible symptom. I thought about my former team. Talented people who deserved better than Virelia's poisoned culture. Tell Marcus and the others they can use me as a reference. All of them. That evening, I met Sarah Rodriguez for coffee. She was exactly as I remembered, direct, brilliant, and absolutely no tolerance for corporate bullshit. I won't lie to you, she said. Nexus is smaller. The salary would be less than Virelia's offering. But we're building something real. No nepotism, no toxic bros, no covering up misconduct. Just good people doing innovative work. Why me, honestly? Sarah smiled. Because you stood up. Do you know how rare that is? Most people take the severance and sign the NDA. You fought back, even when it could have destroyed you. That's the kind of courage we need. I need time to think. Take all you need. The offer stands. Wednesday morning, I made my decision. I called Rebecca. Set up a meeting with Virelia. I want to deliver my answer in person. At 2 p.m., I walked back into Virelia Solutions for the last time. The lobby felt different, smaller somehow, less intimidating. Security waved me through with obvious discomfort. Everyone knew who I was now. The interim CEO, board members, and head of HR waited in the same conference room where Connor had presided just days ago. They stood when I entered, faces eager with desperate hope. I remained standing. Thank you for the offer. It's generous, but I decline. The interim CEO's face fell. Elena, please reconsider. We need your expertise. You need a complete cultural overhaul, I interrupted. And that can't happen with me as a constant reminder of what you allowed. My presence would just be a band-aid on a severed artery. If it's about money, it's about integrity. Virelia had 3 years to value me properly. It took a scandal to make that happen. I won't be your redemption story. I signed the papers Rebecca had prepared, a clean separation, no lawsuit, just the back pay owed and a neutral reference. As I turned to leave, the head of HR spoke up. Where will you go? I thought about Sarah's offer, about building something new without the shadow of Connor Rains and everything he represented. Somewhere that deserves me, I said, and walked out. Thursday morning, I accepted Sarah's offer at Nexus Technologies. No fanfare, no press release, just a simple email confirming my start date in 2 weeks. I spent the rest of the day at Barton Springs, floating in the cold water, watching the clouds drift overhead. For the first time in years, I had nothing urgent to do, no fires to put out, no Connor Rains to navigate around. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, scrolling through my phone. The Austin Business Journal had published a follow-up. Virelia Solutions, stock plummets, 40% amid exodus of top talent. Below that, a smaller headline. Connor Rains charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and destruction of evidence. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a strange emptiness where my anger had been. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life. Connor. I considered blocking him, then typed back, "No. You destroyed your own life. I just refuse to let you destroy mine." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "My father won't speak to me." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Connor had learned what I'd known all along, that consequences don't care about your last name or your trust fund. They come for everyone eventually. Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after my termination. I met my former team for drinks at the Roosevelt Room. Marcus, Priya, James, and 6 others who'd resigned that week. The mood was celebratory but tinged with uncertainty. To Elena, Marcus raised his glass, for showing us that fighting back is possible. To all of us, I corrected, for refusing to accept the unacceptable. Priya had already landed at Apple. Marcus was starting his own consultancy. James had 3 offers and was weighing his options. The diaspora of Virelia's talent was spreading across Austin's tech scene, carrying with them a story of what happens when toxic leadership meets accountability. 2 weeks later, I started at Nexus. Sarah introduced me to a team of 12 engineers, all brilliant, all there by choice rather than circumstance. No nepotism hires, no toxic dynamics, just people who wanted to build something meaningful. "We have a strict no asshole policy," Sarah announced during my first all-hands meeting. "Anyone who creates a hostile environment is gone. No exceptions, no second chances, no matter who their father is." The team actually applauded. 6 months passed. Nexus launched 2 successful products under my leadership. We grew from 12 to 35 employees, each one carefully vetted not just for skills, but for cultural fit. Real cultural fit, not Connor's twisted version. I heard through the grapevine that Virelia had been acquired by a larger firm for a fraction of its previous value. The brand was being dissolved. The Austin office closed. Russell Raines had moved to Colorado, his reputation in tatters. Connor was awaiting trial, his legal bills eating through his trust fund. But I tried not to think about them anymore. I had better things to focus on. One Tuesday morning, I was reviewing code when Sarah knocked on my office door. Yes, I had an office with a door now. Not a glass fishbowl. "There's someone here to see you," she said with an odd expression. Jan from Virelia's HR stood in the lobby, looking smaller than I remembered. "Elena, I'm sorry to bother you. I know I have no right to ask, but I was wondering if Nexus might be hiring." I studied her for a moment, this woman who'd stood by while Connor destroyed my career, who'd processed my termination despite knowing it was wrong. But I also remembered her tears, her fear, her own powerlessness in that toxic system. "Send me your resume," I said finally. "We'll follow the standard process. No promises." She nodded, understanding. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." As she left, I realized something had shifted. The anger was truly gone now, replaced by something more powerful. The knowledge that I'd survived, that I'd won not by destroying Connor, but by refusing to be destroyed myself. That evening, I stood on Congress Avenue Bridge watching the bats emerge in their nightly exodus. Hundreds of thousands of them, flowing out like smoke against the sunset. Each one small, seemingly powerless. But together, they were unstoppable. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Someone had shared Jennifer Liu's latest article. 1 year later, how the Virelia scandal changed Austin's tech culture. The subtitle read, "The Elena Braddock Effect, Why Speaking Up Matters." I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I was living it. As the last of the bats disappeared into the darkening sky, I thought about that Friday afternoon when Connor had smiled while ending my career. "It's nothing personal," he'd said. "Just business." He was wrong about that too. Business is always personal when it's your life being destroyed. But he was about to learn something I discovered in those dark days after my termination. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served with a subpoena. I turned away from the bridge and walked toward my car. Tomorrow. Nexus would announce our Series B funding. Next month, we'd expand to Seattle. And Connor Raines, he'd be sitting in a federal courthouse, explaining to a jury why he thought he was above the law. There's a certain poetic justice in that. Fired on Friday, jobless on Monday, and eventually, probably in federal prison by the following year. Some lessons, it turns out, people have to learn the hard way. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced workplace injustice? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments. Your stories matter too.